Canada apps are created. I'm going to try. I laugh at my own jokes. That makes me the worst joke teller. A loving relationship, partnership between Mr. Government and Ms. Agile. I don't know why Ms. Agile is in dire need of dental care and probably a brow wax, but it really is a great partnership. When government gets together and does something in an agile way, it works out perfectly. What is agile methodology? So there's basically 5 stages to it. You start off with an analysis stage, you go into a design stage, you implement the design, you test it, and you test ad nauseum. You evaluate your testing, what happens from the testing, and then you'll actually reanalyze your needs, redesign, re-implement, and it goes so iteratively through the process. Eventually you will get to deploy. So I'm going to look at each step with the overriding idea of we aren't creating a dating app, but there's a lot of parallels between weather and dating. Okay, analysis, stage 1. So the question you would say if you were arranging or creating a dating app is, am I looking for a mate? In the government, we say, do we need an app? And if the answer is yes, go on. If the answer is no at this point, don't even go any further. If there isn't a need for an app, don't create an app. It's a waste of time, money, and resources. Now, do you know what you think you're going to put in the app? I would contend that most of us in the government would say no. I would actually say that the best way to decide what goes in an app is to ask your audience. And for us, the audience were Canadians. So we actually did a bit of a survey. It was a great way to start the process because it gave us an idea of what Canadians wanted in a weather app, as opposed to what we, a bunch of meteorologists, think belongs in a weather app. The other thing that you're going to need right at the very beginning, you have to ask yourself, do I have supportive management? And if the answer isn't, 1,000, 10,000% yes, that's going to be difficult. The supportive management aspect of this is absolutely key. Okay, stage 2. Again, if we were dating, it would be imagine the ideal mate. Imagine what you're after. Government of Canada people are not very good, I was going to say not very good at picking mates. They're not very good at app design. So this is where I would say, bring in your experts for app design. This is where we talk about UX, UI. How do people navigate an app? How do they work their way around the app? This is what these experts are really good at. So bring them in. At this stage, however, and again, if you were dating, I would caution this, don't get hung up on cosmetics. Not all of us need a square-jawed jock. You're actually going to look at the app in what's called a wireframe, a very simplistic outline of what the app will do functionally. Just stay with that at the design stage. Don't go any further. Be aware of scope creep. This is where a bunch of you, generally in my case, meteorologists, decide we want this in the app and this would be great in the app. Don't do that. Stick to what Canadians or your audience wants in the app and really be careful to stop scope creep. This is where you can do it, actually. And obviously, I would say to myself, and there's probably meteorologists listening right now, but never, ever, ever let a bunch of meteorologists build a weather app. They'll build something way too complicated for Canadians. Okay, implementation. This is stage 3. This is where we're creating the mate. At this point, this is where you hand it over to your IT team. And knowing that I'm using these terrible graphics, I had to put in that line, and then I've scored it out because you really shouldn't read it. Okay, trust your IT team. They will take what you think you want and work on the back end. And quite frankly, what we discovered with our IT guys, the guys from CFSB, they hired a lot of millennials. They have millennials. These people are gold. I mean, millennials, students, they grew up in the world of social media, unlike me, who had a 3-channel black and white TV. These guys grew up with apps. So inherently, they're going to be really useful to you because even though they're implementing the back end, they already are thinking about the front end. So your millennials, your IT guys, gold. And if you have to, use contractors. We were developing an app that was obviously going to be released on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. And the Apple back end is quite complicated. So we had to use contractors at one point. But our IT guys, peered over the shoulder of the contractor, learned from them. And that's the beauty of government, right? Let's bring in the talent gap where we see it, and then we'll learn from them, and then we actually build that intelligence into our own infrastructure. Stage 4, and this is the ultimately mind-numbingly boring part of it, but test and test and test. Test to see if the person that you think you want is what you actually really do want. Or otherwise, you know, test to see if what you seek is truly what you're getting. Test frequently, test often, test with non-subject matter experts. So there was a bunch of meteorologists that wanted to test our app. We actively held them at bay. We needed to make sure that, you know, Grandma Martin could actually work her way around our app, and that's really important. Test the accessibility. It has to be accessible to everybody, and apps are a different beast. Does the text to voice reader, if you are visually impaired, does that work well with what you're trying to portray? I also would say test, and I'd say this very strongly, test regressively. So regressive testing is when you rerun functional tests that were previously developed to make sure that the new implementation of the new features haven't actually broken what was previously developed. So go back to the beginning, test the app from the very beginning, and that's what they call test regressively. Super important. In fact, I would say it's crucial these days because of the way and the pace at which technology is advancing. And for me, test because you're bored, you know, sit in front of the TV and just test, test, test constantly. Stage 5, evaluate, is who I've got a good mate for me. Now, the first question I would say is, does the app basically do what you would expect it to do? But more importantly, does it do what the general public wants? Again, who is your audience? Who are you building an app for? We were building the app for Canadians. So does the app do what Canadians expect it to do? Is it functionally perfect? You know, Patrick, you were talking about a minimum viable product. We didn't have that luxury. Our app was going out to Canadians, the great unwashed, basically. So it had to be perfect. So is it functionally perfect? Does it do exactly what we expect it to do? And more importantly, is it easy to navigate? You know, 48% of Canadians read at grade 8 level or below. And in fact, that's why the Canada.ca content style guide instructs us to write information at grades sort of 6 to 8. So it has to be easy to use and easy to navigate. And then, you know, have you actually missed anything? If you've missed something, agile development allows you to go back and start the process again, the analysis process, and put whatever you think you might have missed back into the app. And finally, are you happy with your decisions and choices? You've got to be sort of happy with what you've built at the end of the day. It needs to serve Canadians, but you've got to make yourself feel good. Okay, so a perfect match. I love this, a dating app, but this is a weather app, don't forget. A perfect match is made in heaven when, for us, you are serving the public, you're doing what you set out to do, and you've done it in a way that is agilely. That's a word, right? Because it's not underlined in the deck. So working agilely helps the government of Canada basically achieve goals and achieve them faster. So I would say this match for us, for our app, was definitely made in heaven. The weather app serves Canada, serves Canadians, and works agilely. Okay, quick look at app stats, just to give you an idea of what we've done. Since February, we actually soft launched on the 7th. We then did a full launch on the 14th of February. We've had 2 million downloads. I know if you look at the cumulative users, the numbers don't quite add up. That's because we changed the way we were looking at unique users. And we're keeping people in the app for 0.65 of a minute. It's about 39 seconds. It's not a huge amount of time, but hopefully that's because the app is easy to use. Jasmine, I can see you. I'm going to zing through the last few slides here, honest. We've broken down the app stats to basically show you how many people are in the app per day, per 7-day, and per 30-day. And as I said, we've got quite a few users. We're quite happy about it. Lessons learned. The app was created at a huge cost to other projects because a lot of resources were moved over. Obviously, there were the financial costs, but it was the cost to the other projects. And that's something that you really do have to think about when you're creating an app. But on the upside, we won a couple of awards. So, we were quite happy. SFSB was quite happy. We were quite happy. And then lastly, I have to plug what I'm doing in the app. This is our message center. I'm no longer in app development. I write the messages that you see in your app, and I think they're awesome. So again, download the app. Weather can, Nature can, either works. Okay, I'm done. There we go. Back to you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Never, ever did we think that we would be presenting an app alongside a government app alongside a dating app. That is exciting, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your metrics. Those are important as well. And audience, thank you for blowing up Slido. So we're going to go straight to your questions. Presenters, if you want to turn your cameras back on. Claire, if you want to unshare your screen, because I can see myself and it's
okay.
annoying.
Let me stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much. There we go. So what are some of the challenges getting all internal authorizations to make the app a reality? And what would you have done differently in hindsight? Like, this is the reality of trying to work in an agile manner in a government that is not agile friendly.
I'll let somebody else go. I've been talking.
I'll take a crack at what we did. Fortunately for us, and I just want to say kudos to both Gal and Claire for wonderful presentations. I mean, they were awesome, guys. Just learned so much. 10 million downloads, Claire? Seriously?
2 million.
2 million?
2 million.
Crazy. Because we're happy at 9,000. We're beating the drums at 9,000. Anyway, our app was supported by 3 different ADMs initially, just in an informal conversation. And our ADM decided that she wanted to spearhead this, even though it wasn't necessarily the role of an HR branch ADM. But because it was her idea for the app, because her daughter was using an app during the early stages of the pandemic that did all of her payroll, all of her communications. And Darlene de Gravina saw this and saw, why can't we do something similar? Even though we can't get past the network, they were able to communicate with her daughter on urgent pieces of COVID-related information while she was on this app. So that's where the birth of the product came from. Now, with the getting the authorizations, because it came from essentially the person who would authorize that type of a thing, we didn't really have to go pounding on doors and convincing people. The convincing came in, and I saw some of the other questions on Slido, which I won't get into, in identifying and letting people know what the story is. Why is it required? What does it do? What's the gap it fills? And why an app? So we can perhaps get into that, but perhaps somebody else would like to talk about the authorizations that they had to receive in order to go forward with the app.
Merci, thank you so much.
I'll have to say from my end, again, having ADM and actually ministerial approval every step of the way just really helped us. And my management, who I lovingly called the senior management, were on it every week. I presented them with, I need approval for this. I got an answer back within probably hours, not days, and then we moved on. So seniors' approval, absolutely paramount.
Sinai, did you have anything to add? Or?
Yes, and I'm jumping in just to reiterate what Claire mentioned. Having senior approval is necessary. So in our case, we had the deputy minister was really keen into this. But some of other challenges that we might encounter, but that are not related to internal authorizations, but it might be at some point, is in terms of accessibility or any other aspects of the app. So before the app is released, of course, if you have senior authorization, that's great. But if it's not up to the accessibility standards, it would not go out. So I would be adding that point to this discussion.
Yeah, there are a bunch of requirements that need to be met before this actually gets the kind of blessing to move forward, etc. A lot of work, we know. So how are you collecting feedback to make sure that the app is doing what it needs to be doing, and how do you inform improvements, iterations, etc.? Is there like a formal process, or is your team like super good at that now?
I'll take a crack at that one. So for us, we have two avenues that folks can send in their feedback. One is directly on the app where they can send in their suggestions, technical issues, anything like that. And we do get a lot of feedback from that, anywhere from saying this is a great app to here's a suggestion to we're having trouble with the COVID tool, whatever the case may be. We also have an internal feedback set up for, we have a GDM that our internally folks can send us anything that they want, basically. And we do get a lot of action that way too. So a lot of great ideas are coming from our users. It's great.
I'll echo Stacey. Same thing. We've got an in-app feedback process. And we've also retained our original sort of tester group of 50,000. And we test every new version through them and get tons of feedback. So, and you know what? Please God, people, listen to your feedback. You just got to. We can't be tone deaf. You have to listen to what people want and what they think.
That's a great point.
Yeah. We also have banners in our website that we use to promote latest updates related to the mobile app or to the program in general. We are implementing or recently implementing the push app notifications to let users know or to nudge them if they have not updated their apps. And then we also are implementing, well, I don't know if you're familiar, for our job seekers, we have daily or weekly emails also. And then in those emails, we are using those as newsletters. At the end of the alerts, there is a did you know section. And then we are using that also to communicate with our users and let them know that there is an easier way for them to keep on the on the actuality related to jobs on their mobile app.
Very cool. Mr. Dwyer.
Yeah, just wanted to add that in addition to our feedback and our internal GD mailbox, the two app platforms, Google and Apple, also have feedback functionalities built into the App Store and the Google Store. So clients, people who download the app can leave information about their experience with the app. They get to rate it. So it is useful from the perspective that you can find whether somebody thinks the app is useful, and some people will be very critical, of course, and complain about the color of the background. But you'll also find out whether or not you're slipping in the 5-star category. You know, are all of a sudden you're getting lower ratings. So while the feedback is probably 20% as helpful as the internal stuff that's directed directly, it's still a good source of information to help guide you. And as Claire said, this is your bread and butter. You've got to listen to these people, and you've got to. You might not be able to do everything they say, but boy, you better try to make this as attractive as you can, because you know that's how you're going to get more attention and downloads and get your message out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madame Gal Sinai.
Yes, and just to respond to the second part of the question, how do we really know that we are meeting their needs after we receive the feedback? Is that, well, in our case, in Job Bank, we have a data unit. So sometimes with Firebase, we create, I'm sorry if I'm too technical, going to technical language here, but we create events so we can track whether the new implementation really is helping users to find their way better into the app. So there is like a support for us, not only to rely on what our users tell us, because after the feedback is taken, sometimes they don't come back. They just would be coming back if something is bad or wrong. If everything's good, sometimes it keeps silent. But then we also have a way to say to our director, hey, we did this and this was the result.
Wonderful, thank you. I love hearing this. User centricity, the government is moving in the right direction. Are we doing the right thing for the end users? This is a beautiful lens that we should apply everywhere and in anything we do. Super important to keep maintain our services to Canadians as well. I have a question for you that's not on Slido. Just because we've been talking about how we gather. What? Me? No, you. Wow, really? No?
What?
Can you hear me?
Oui, c'est bon.
So what's this guy trying to tell me? Can't hear me? I'm so sorry. So we get all this feedback from users who are like, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. But then you have the deputy ministers and the ADMs who are like, I also want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, and your partners. So how do we do that? How do we reconcile what the users want and what the departments want, and you know, try to make everyone happy if we can? Can we?
I'm gonna let somebody else start. Yeah, go for it.
I'll pipe in here, and I'll ask my partners to pipe in here after. But for us, we really rode the coattails of being an agile project methodology way that we did business. And so if we got something that didn't matter who we got it from, be it senior management or just our own little back and forth of what would be cool to have it, we stuck to minimum viable product. Let's get the baby born first. And if there's something that was asked that we couldn't necessarily deliver on our MVP, it's now in the list of the 2.0 version project that we will then look at and prioritize and see what is doable at that time. Yeah. So the agile methodology and the timeframes within that were our guidance, and our senior management supported that. Yeah.
The tension between what the users want and what the senior officials want really hasn't shown up in our app yet because we're a bit new. But what we're finding, and I'd be interested to see if Gal and Claire have the same sort of experience. As we mature as an app, there are so many eyes on us. There are so many people saying, hey, we could use that app for this. This app could be functional for things like onboarding, recruiting, emergency response systems. So all of a sudden, the objective of the original component of the app, which was to communicate out to employees, now has been achieved. So now there's a brand new objective evolving based on demand that we did not even know was there. So that dichotomy, that tension is developing, but we have not had any disparity between the direction we've been getting from senior management and what the users want. So I'd be interested to see if my colleagues have similar experiences.
Madame Benitez, Contreras. Ma'am.
Well,
I'm going to turn my camera off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, is everything okay now? Okay,
yeah,
perfect. So, of course, in our case, we were pointed out and we were told to develop an app because it was under the strategy, the digital transformation initiative. So it was a big task. However, this was a policy process. So we reunited and then we created different options. Well, first, before creating those options, we went to ask, let's say, applause, that is like in disability testing people. We went to Forrester to know exactly what people were looking for in an app related to job searching. We did focus groups, and then we presented a set of options. So we really represented our users' needs against what we were tasked to do. So as Patrick mentioned, there was like the word tension in our case wasn't like something that we had to overcome.
No tension. This is perfect. Claire, do you have a different story?
I was going to say, I'll bring you tension, Patrick, and raise it to a smackdown. The app is very successful by virtue of the content, right? Everybody wants weather. It's not like we created a great app. We did, but it's weather. Let's go to March 2020 when the world imploded, and we were asked to put COVID trends in our app. Of course, this doesn't belong in a weather app. It doesn't align with the functionality. Talk about scope creep. This is just like, are you kidding me? Anyway, it's a national emergency. And then you also have to weigh how we are serving Canadians, but this was really important. People at that time were very attuned to numbers, breakouts, regional numbers. So we put it in the app. We were able to use some of the geolocation functionality of the app to show this data. So, you know, it's funny, in times of national emergency, when the need arises, we were able to leverage the app in a way that I never foresaw in 2019. Is it the best thing? I'm not going to answer that, but it worked. Canadians get that information, and we were able to. So that's the balance, right? What's good for Canadians and what's good for program. You have to swallow it sometimes. So good question, Patrick, and good question, actually, Jasmine.
Yeah. So as we are getting to time, we have a lot more questions for you, of course. So thank you very much for sharing your time and sharing your insights and your decks. Those will all be available through GC Collab and GC Wiki. I'm going to do a little round table and go, if you had one piece of advice or information to pass on today, what would that be? Claire, I'm going to start with you because you're upper left.
If somebody asks you to make an app, say no and run away. No, I would actually say, you know what, go with your gut and collaborate. I have formed so much of a respect for my partners in IT. Those guys on the back end, the millennials, the students, like they took this project and ran. So as I said from the very beginning, my title has nothing to do with IT or technology, and I would consider it a feather in my cap now.
Super. Stacey, Patrick, Rona.
My recommendation would be to ask for Rona Bourji as your IT manager.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for that. But on a serious note, I would say don't be afraid to experiment and try something new. You're going to hear a lot of negativity. You're going to hear people who may not see any value in what you're doing, but really innovation is about experimenting, thinking outside of the box, starting with something simple, something small. So always go back to simplicity. Don't invest too much, but enough for you to get input from your users, because there's always opportunities to improve and get better. But if you don't try it, then it's a missed opportunity at the end of the day. So that's my piece of advice. And I think it went well for my ESDC. And that's probably my biggest advice that I can share with you today.
Madame Gal Sinai.
Well, I will go back to, is it really app worthy? And I'm going to share that in the chat. So you can have always questions to come back and to really think about the usability and efficiency of your potential app. So ask your questions and go back also to Claire's presentation, which was great about the lovers, government, and agility. So that works. And she mentioned a lot of times our public, Canadians. So really, at the end of the day, it's not what our deputy wants. It's not what we want. Sometimes we have ideas, we consider ourselves experts in our area, but it's not what we think. It's what our public is asking us.
100%. Merci beaucoup. So thank you all so much. I know we're over time. Merci à tous et à toutes pour votre participation aujourd'hui. You've been a wonderful audience. You guys are amazing presenters, but also that's why we invited you. Today's session demonstrates how it's important we continue to challenge the current thinking in order to help prepare for the future. And we are happy to share all the documents more widely once they're ready. Please keep an eye out for the transcripts, the recordings on the GC Collab pages and wiki. Stay safe, everyone. Take care of yourselves. À la prochaine.